And we're back. You're listening to Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. And our guest for this segment, Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector and WMD whistleblower. We're talking about Trump's changes over in the Pentagon, changing out the defense in the White House, technically, but presiding over the Pentagon, changing out the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Again, this was called by the establishment media, by the New York Times and others, preparations for a coup like we're talking about. It seems like it might be preparations for a pullout, specifically of Afghanistan, although there are hopes waiting in the wings that Syria and a complete withdrawal from Iraq will follow. Here's the thing, Scott, quick question here. Back in July, the House Armed Services Committee voted overwhelmingly in favor of an amendment that was jointly sponsored by Dick Cheney's daughter to prohibit the expenditure of money to reduce the number of U.S. troops deployed in Afghanistan below 8,000. So you're talking about we need to get below 2,000. They're basically keeping us from getting below 8,000. They're saying that in order for that money to be provided, you'd have to prove that the withdrawal would not, quote, increase the risk for the expansion of existing or formation of new terrorist safe havens inside Afghanistan, end quote, or would, quote, not compromise or otherwise negatively affect the ongoing United States counterterrorism mission against the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, and associated forces, end quote. Now, there's one comment you could briefly make here, which is that we have been supporting the Islamic State through supporting IS affiliates, through supporting ISIS affiliates in Syria. So on its face, this is a little bit paradoxical that was good for one country apparently isn't good for the other. Admittedly, we shouldn't be funding them in either. We shouldn't be doing anything in either, but I'm just throwing that in there. Again, here's the thing. We got a couple of months here. Trump has previously said that he wants to withdraw by Christmas, but Congress is undoubtedly going to go against him. Even though he's changing out the heads of the Pentagon, I don't see the Pentagon, the body of the Pentagon, going with him. What's your take? Can he actually do this, or is this just a shot in the dark here, Scott?
No, he can do it. First of all, the congressional action just simply requires a report. They don't have a veto authority over squat. They've just put on a requirement, a rider that says the president has to provide, they say proof or guarantees. It's just a report. So all the president has to do is tune up a ream of paper, throw it at Congress, check off the box, say I fulfilled my requirement here, and now we're pulling the troops out. The Congress, can review it, they can complain, but they can't say he's violated, the intent of Congress or whatever, and it will happen. I think what you're seeing right now is Trump's in a firing mood. Again, one of the problems you have is every time somebody resigns in protest, the media picks it up and runs with it. And that's why, Trump didn't clean house beforehand. Plus, it's very disruptive to the military. But I don't think he cares right now. And I just think that basically, if Miller can get this steamroller moving, anybody who tries to get in its way will literally be fired. I can see the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff being cashiered. I can see anybody with 4 stars who says no being cashiered. I can see anybody who's a political appointee who hiccups cashiered. So, it's just a matter right now of political will. Can the president do this? Absolutely. Will he do it? I think he's trying. And we'll just see. Again, if he has the political will, and I think by getting rid of Esper and putting in these people who are similarly inclined, he can get it done. It'll be a bloodbath. There will be a lot of people fired, but American troops can come home. There's literally the only thing stopping them is the amount of flights we can fly into Afghanistan, load up, and fly out.
Scott, if we pull out, this people, especially neocons, always make the argument that what is going to fill the gaps of America receding is going to be antagonistic to American interests. Should we care that what fills the gap is antagonistic to American interests? And will it be antagonistic? Meaning, us being in the countries, are we creating our monsters to such a degree that us pulling out gives us a better outcome from a foreign policy standpoint politically?
We went into Afghanistan in 2001 after 9/11, and we did a lot of really stupid things. We, first of all, declared war on the Taliban, which fundamental error, because the Taliban, and I'm not sitting here promoting the Taliban as the most wonderful people on the planet. They're not, but what they are is a reflection of a majority of the Pashto tribal mentality that exists in Afghanistan. It's not the United States' role to come in and try and do social transformation in Afghanistan. It's not our role to go into Afghanistan and make Western-style suffrage, a reality. It's not our role to go in there and redefine the relationship between Islam and secular society. And yet that's what we've tried to do and failed for the last nearly 20 years. We've built up this straw man argument that, if we withdraw from Afghanistan, Afghanistan will fail. No, what we're saying is if we withdraw from Afghanistan, the false vision of Afghanistan that we've tried to construct will fail. Well, guess what? It's always going to fail. It will never succeed. The fact of the matter is Afghanistan will only succeed when Afghanistan decides it wants to succeed, and you have to give them a chance. I do believe that the world has changed since 2001, and when the Taliban come into power, and I say that as conclusively and decisively as I can, because they will come back to power. They've never been defeated. They are the dominant force in Afghanistan today. I think they recognize that there will have to be changes to the way they govern. This isn't a bunch of Talib running around hanging corrupt warlords is what occurred when they were founded. Afghanistan has progressed somewhat. There is more infrastructure, and I think the Taliban have realized that in addition to promoting Islamic fundamentalism, they have to govern, and government requires compromise. So I do think we'll say a changed Afghanistan. It won't be the Afghanistan that we've tried to artificially create, but it will be a real Afghanistan that has a real chance of success if we just get out of the way and let it happen. We are the problem, not the Taliban. We are the problem.
Scott, we only got a couple minutes left, and I kind of want to change topics in those last couple of minutes. But just to wrap up briefly here, you were saying earlier the American military does not know how to win a war. I think that's frankly because if you win a war, then you can't continue fighting that war. And what our whole industrial complex is built on, our whole the militant complex is built on fighting wars. It's built on continuing those wars. If you win them, you got to stop fighting them. And of course, for the economic interest at play here, that's a problem. Also, another brief wrap-up note. Trump yesterday, we're talking about a wider purge of pro-militarist elements within the Pentagon. Trump yesterday on Twitter calling, and I'm going to quote here, John Bolton, quote, one of the dumbest people in government that I've had the pleasure to work with, a sullen, dull, and quiet guy. He added nothing to national security except, gee, let's go to war, end quote. I'm sure that's pretty satisfying for a lot of sort of pro-Trump, anti-military supporters to hear. That was sure nice. Another thing, just briefly, last thing here, you were commenting on this, how the envoy to Syria, the ambassador to Syria, Jim Jeffrey, was hiding the numbers, and he was specifically talking about how they were hiding the numbers. The local military was hiding the numbers from higher ups. I'm going to quote here. Quote, we were always playing shell games to not make clear to our leadership how many troops we had there, end quote. That was in an interview with Jeffrey talking about the actual number of troops in northeast Syria, which he was saying he told Trump, other people had told Trump was roughly 200 troops. The Trump had initially agreed to leave there in 2019, several times more than that, somewhere like around the 800, 900 region, somewhere in that vicinity, many more. A factor of a couple times more than what they were saying. In any event, also, just brief note on this, the Washington Post Beirut bureau chief, when she was covering this, actually laughed about this on Twitter, sort of joking about this. Again, it's against Trump, certainly. So she's laughing, they were lying to Trump. Well, Trump's incompetent. He doesn't have the actual numbers here. But again, she's joking about the administration in a war, lower down, lying to the higher ups in order to keep the war going, in order to keep our intervention going. Just ugly stuff. In any event, we've only got a couple of minutes left, Scott. I wanted to ask you, do you think, and when do you think Trump would, or when do you think he should concede the election if he doesn't have enough institutional momentum, if the facts aren't there, first and foremost, if there wasn't actually sufficient voter fraud to swing the election in favor of Biden against Trump, if that's not what's happened, if it was a legitimate election in that sense, When do you think he should concede?
Well, he should concede as a matter of constitutional law, meaning that when the Electoral College, these recounts, these challenges, everything need to be done by December 8th, which I think is the safe harbor date for the Electoral College. And then I think on the 14th, somewhere around there, they will actually cast their votes. At that point in time, when it becomes clear that Joe Biden has 270 plus constitutionally viable electoral votes, it's over. And at that point in time, Donald Trump must do what is constitutionally required of him, which is, concede the election, however gracefully or graciously he wants to be about that is his business. But he also needs at that point in time to ensure that the President-elect Biden, incoming administration gets the full support for the transition that is constitutionally and lawfully required. All this noise about, he's holding up the transition, that's garbage. Biden doesn't need to begin doing the transition until he has a constitutional mandate. In the past, there's been some courtesy for, allowing phase 2, transition funds to be released and authorizations to be released by the GSA and all that. But no, that is not required until the Electoral College has certified a winner, and everybody knows this, and so that's when Trump will do it if required. And from his point of view, a miracle occurs, and he flips some states, Supreme Court intervenes, whatever, and he gets the votes, then he's the next president. They're going to have him 4 more years, but right now it looks like Biden's going to prevail, and he just has to be patient, let constitutional due process play itself out. And that's what we're seeing here. It's not a coup. It's not Trump, doing anything other than what he is permitted by law to challenge a contested election by law. And so let's get it done. Let's let this play out. And then, once we get clarity, Trump will move forward. There's no doubt in my mind that if the Electoral College certifies Joe Biden as the president-elect, then Donald Trump will do what is required of him constitutionally.
Only a couple of weeks out here. Scott, we're out of time. We will see how this comes to pass, and we'll get you on soon to talk about it. For those listening, Scott Ritter is a former UN weapons inspector and WMD whistleblower, and you can follow him on Twitter at RealScottRitter. You're listening to Fault Lines with Jamarl Thomas and Shane Stranahan.